Welcome to the Catholic Couch, the official audio podcast of the Catholic Counseling Institute. I'm Amber Pilkington, Catholic therapist, wife, and mother. Around here, we talk about real issues with real faith, blending the wisdom of the Catholic Church with the best of psychology, so you can find clarity, peace, and purpose in your relationships, your vocation, and everyday life. Whether you're folding laundry or driving the carpool, pull up a seat and let's go. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Catholic Couch, where we talk about the beautiful, messy, and meaningful intersections of Catholic faith and mental health, and give you real tools for real life. I'm Amber Pilkington, Catholic therapist, wife, mom, and woman who has absolutely cried because someone put the forks in the wrong part of the dishwasher. So if you're feeling a little fragile today, you're not alone. We're in the middle of a 5-part series on boundaries in Catholic marriage, and today's episode is one I think every couple, newlyweds, seasoned veterans, or we're just trying to make it to bedtime, needs to hear. Because today we're asking a deceptively simple question. Why do we keep missing each other when we try to communicate? You try to communicate clearly, but your spouse hears something totally different. Are we really speaking the same language here? Sometimes it doesn't feel like it. You try to be gentle, and they still get defensive. You think you're asking for help, and they think you're criticizing. What in the world is going on here? Well, that's what we're unpacking today. And of course, we'll be checking in with our 3 fictional but very relatable couples, Emily and Josh, Teresa and Mike, and Carmen and Leo. Because sometimes the best way to understand your own dynamic is to see it played out in someone else's story. But before we dive into their stories, I want to say this. If you've ever walked out of a conversation thinking, how did that go so wrong? Or feeling like you want to bang your head against the wall and scream, this was so much easier when we were dating. You are not crazy. You're probably experiencing a communication breakdown that has more to do with your wiring than the worth or health of your relationship as a whole. And I don't just mean personality differences, though those matter. I mean the physiological, psychological, and relational patterns that shape how we hear, respond, and react. This episode is all about learning to recognize those patterns, not to place blame, but to reclaim choice. Because when you can name the disconnect, you can actually do something about it. Name it to tame it, right? This isn't about who's right and who's wrong. In fact, thinking in me versus him or me versus her is absolutely not the stance or internal thinking framework you want entering into conflict. Remember, the problem isn't your partner, it's the ineffective cycle you are in. It's the two of you against the cycle. It's essential to build awareness so we can move toward each other more skillfully and more kindly. It's about understanding that love needs clarity to grow. I'll say that again. Love needs clarity to grow. So today's episode is part insight, part strategy, part gentle. You're not the only one, and hopefully part invitation. An invitation to pause, notice, and choose a new way forward. So if that sounds good to you, let's go. Let's start with something foundational. Personality isn't just about quirks or Enneagram numbers. I am not an Enneagram fan, by the way. It's about how we interpret reality, how we assign meaning, handle stress, and move toward or away from connection. In marriage, you're not just learning to communicate with your spouse's words. You're learning to speak their language of experience. Let's visit Carmen and Leo. They love each other. They mean well, but it's like they're always on a 2-second delay. Carmen says something, Leo reacts, and suddenly they're both confused about how the conversation derailed. Again, why does this happen? Carmen comes from a home where everything was kept below the surface. Her parents avoided conflict, no yelling, which is good, but also no depth, which is not. Meanwhile, Leo's family was big, bold, and loud. They said what they felt right away and processed it all in the open. So when Carmen says, I need time to think, it feels like abandonment to Leo. And when Leo says, I'm being honest, it feels like an attack to Carmen. Neither one is necessarily wrong. They're just wired differently. According to the Myers-Briggs model of temperament, Myers and Briggs Foundation, and a personality assessment I like, thinkers tend to prioritize logic, clarity, and resolution. Feelers prioritize harmony, tone, and emotional safety. That doesn't mean men are thinkers and women are feelers. Nope. Newer research shows that it's a mixed bag. But it does mean that communication will break down quickly if you're using one channel and your spouse is listening on another. So what's the boundary here? It might sound like, when I pause to process, it doesn't mean I'm stonewalling. It means I care enough to want to respond well. Or, I want to hear what you're feeling, but I need you to lower your volume so I can really hear what you are saying. Boundaries here are not about silencing the other person. They're about translating your world so the other person can actually receive it. Remember this: assertiveness is not just saying something loudly and harshly. Assertiveness can simply be asserting how you feel or what you think. Saying that hurt is assertiveness. Saying I need a minute to process is also assertiveness. Love without understanding is not intimacy, and it requires a type of reading between the lines that wears people down and is, quite frankly, exhausting. My opinion, being in a relationship with someone who wants you to read between the lines and read their mind by their subtle behavior cues, ain't nobody got time for that. Let's turn the spotlight to Emily and Josh. They've been married 5 years, have 2 young kids, and are deep in what I lovingly call goldfish cracker era parenting. If you're parents of young kids, you know exactly what I mean, right? You know the one where there's always a diaper change needed somewhere, bedtime takes forever, and your to-do list is about 74 items long before 9 a.m., although it's usually written in crayon because nothing that makes permanent marks is allowed in the house. Now, on the surface, things look fine. Josh is helpful. He's not a jerk. He folds laundry. He plays with the kids. But Emily's exhausted. Not just physically, but mentally. She's doing all the remembering, all the planning, all the anticipating. And Josh, he doesn't really see the problem because he's doing what she's asking when she asks. That's the gap, though. That's the problem. The mental load, a term first popularized by sociologist Monique Eco and later expanded by Dr. Alison Daminger, 2019, includes the invisible labor of anticipating needs, planning for others, and being the project manager of the household, even when you're also working outside the home. And here's the kicker: most of it goes unspoken, so it doesn't get shared. So it gets heavy. Here's what it sounds like in real life. Emily is thinking, okay, it's Josh's mom's birthday next week. I need to get a card, probably a gift. Oh, and the kids have a dentist appointment Thursday. I should remind him so he doesn't schedule a meeting. And wait, we're low on pull-ups and chicken nuggets. Add Target to the list. Meanwhile, Josh is thinking, Emily seems stressed. Maybe I'll unload the dishwasher. Helpful? Yes. Enough? Not even close. Now remember, this isn't about blame. It's about awareness. Josh isn't trying to drop the ball. He doesn't even see the ball. And in all fairness, Emily is doing a pretty good job of hiding the ball. So what does a boundary look like here? Sometimes it's saying, I'm not going to manage this alone anymore. I need us to sit down once a week and divide responsibilities before I burn out. Not with anger, not with shame, with clarity and love. And maybe a calendar with real pens this time. Okay, let's talk about Teresa and Mike. We don't want them to feel forgotten. They've been married over 2 decades. They volunteer at church, host the holidays, show up to every parish event with a smile and a casserole. But at home, let's just say things are quiet. Not peaceful quiet. More like that tense, subtle, tiptoe around each other kind of quiet. Now, Teresa's not one to stir the pot. And Mike, he's steady, loyal, shows up. But he doesn't really engage. Conversations stay surface level. Most things get done without much emotional connection. And that's starting to wear on Teresa. So last week, after noticing her own growing resentment, Teresa finally said, I feel like we're just sharing a house. I miss you. I want us to feel close again. And Mike's response. He looked up from the newspaper, paused, and said, I haven't changed. I still do the dishes, don't I? Oof, Mike, let me help. Now here's the thing. He's not being cruel. He's trying to show love the way he knows how. The first problem is that he provided a defense without first seeing and validating his wife's emotions. But we can talk more about that later. Teresa is craving connection. What she said wasn't a criticism, it was a bid, to use the words of John and Julie Gottman. She wants emotional engagement, not just task sharing. This brings us to a concept from Dr. Sue Johnson's research on attachment and adult bonding, 2008. At the core of every marital disconnection is this unspoken question. Are you there for me? Do I matter to you? Will you respond to my need? That's the emotional heartbeat beneath every surface-level frustration. It's not about the dishes. It's about longing for presence. If you want to learn more about this, make sure you watch the video on dishwasher arguments on the Catholic Counseling Institute's YouTube channel. When that longing goes unnamed, people stop reaching. They stop bringing up their feelings. They quietly drift, that silent drift if deadly in marriage. So what's the boundary here? It might sound like, I'm grateful for what you do around the house. Notice how she affirmed him first. But what I really need is to feel emotionally close. I need eye contact, a check-in, something that reminds me we're not just roommates. See how she gave him specific examples of what that looks like for her so he isn't left guessing? Great job, Teresa. It's almost as if her response was scripted by a therapist. I'm kidding. That kind of boundary isn't rigid, it's reconnecting. It's a bid for intimacy, not just efficiency. She is asserting her needs and emotions. She's taking them out of the silence of her heart and putting them on the metaphorical table of the relationship so her husband can see them too. And Mike, he may not know how to respond right away, but when the request is made with warmth and specificity, not blame, he has a chance to grow into it. Here is an important tip, ladies. When you ask your husband for something, make sure you also set him up for a clear path to victory. Let him know what hero status looks like to you. Let him know you believe in his ability to meet your need. It's a bit like baseball. You can't guarantee a batter will knock it out of the park, but you can pitch that ball right in the middle of his swing zone, giving him the best possible chance for success. I request without a path sounds like a complaint because our partner often doesn't know what to do with it. And then they usually feel bad and become defensive or critical. You are not responsible for their response, but you can create the best possible conditions for success. Does that make sense? Leave me questions or feedback in the comments if you want more explanation about any of these comments. Because here's the truth. Many spouses will rise to meet a need if we name it before we numb it. Whew, today we've covered a lot. And if you're sitting there thinking, oh no, I think we do any of that, please take a breath. This episode wasn't about pointing fingers. It's about naming the patterns that quietly create distance in marriage, even when both people genuinely want to love each other well. Let's recap where we've been. Carmen and Leo showed us how personality and nervous system wiring impact how we give and receive emotional cues. Emily and Josh highlighted the invisible weight of the mental load and the need to speak what we wish they'd just know. Teresa and Mike reminded us that surface-level peace can hide deeper disconnection, and that true closeness takes more than shared chores. The thread running through all of it? Misunderstanding. And the antidote? Curiosity and clarity. In John 8:32, Jesus says, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." That includes the truth about your marriage, the truth about your emotions, the truth about your needs, not in a harsh, accusatory way, but in a steady, honest way that says, I want to see you clearly because I want to love you deeply. And friends, truth requires boundaries. Without boundaries, we end up saying yes when we mean maybe. We smile when we mean ouch. We stay quiet when our heart is saying please speak. When we lose clarity, we start to lose ourselves. But here's the good news. Every time you name what's real with tenderness and courage, you take one step closer to true intimacy. The kind that makes space for both people, the kind that doesn't require perfection, just presence. One small practice for this week. I want to leave you with one small challenge. Instead of assuming, ask. One time this week, maybe after a disagreement or when you feel a little disconnected, ask your spouse, what did you hear me say just now? That one question can open a doorway to understanding. Not always perfectly, but more than you might think. Every marriage has miscommunications. The difference is whether you treat those moments as dead ends or as invitations to deeper knowing. In our next episode, we're heading into one of the hardest but most important parts of this boundaries journey. What happens when you set a boundary and your spouse gets mad? We'll explore what resistance really means, how to respond without shutting down, and why Catholic marriage isn't about keeping the peace at all costs. It's about making room for peace. So make sure you're subscribed. And if this episode gave you something helpful to think about, would you do me a favor? Leave a review, share it with a friend. It's the best way to help more Catholic women find support, language, and hope. And remember, as always, I'll leave a place for you here on the Catholic couch.